Hi everyone and welcome for another Apitherapy video. This time we'll talk about pollen once again. We did talk about pollen at least once and a little bit in another video before. So you already have all the information about what it's good for, why should we eat pollen and all this. I won't come back on that type of notion today. But what I want to show you is in a very practical level what to do with the pollen once we have it. So yeah, we know we have to buy fresh frozen bee pollen, but once we have that pollen, what do we do with it? So let's see. First thing, of course, we'll cover the allergies on a practical level. So if you do have seasonal allergies, you have many different allergies, you're unsure, are you allergic to pollen? Because you might be, right? Seasonal allergies very often are caused by some type of pollen. So you might be allergic to pollen, all the same to that food source of pollen. So you want to test this. So first type of test is to take one simple grain of pollen. So it's a very small and tiny grain of pollen, and you put it right in between your lip and your gum, your front gum on your lower jaw. So you just put that grain right in between there, like this. You leave it there and you wait about 30 seconds. You might even want to wait a full minute. And after a while, you just you go in front of a mirror and then you can look yourself. And then you pull your lip and you check your gum and you check if it became red, really red. It means you are strongly allergic to pollen. So you might not want to eat pollen. Go first see your allergologist and find out if you can actually slowly desensitize yourself to pollen. Because if your gum becomes red, it means the level of allergy is really high. So that's the first test to be really safe. You don't even have to swallow this then. Huh? If you are allergic, you just spit it out, rinse it with some water and spit it out. You don't want to play with allergies too much. So once this test is done, if you don't become red, that's most of the people, then you can do another test. You take 2 grains, just 2 little grains, and you just put them in your mouth and you dissolve the grains in your mouth with some of your saliva, and then you find out if it's already like stinging on your lips or tongue. Don't even swallow it. You can spit it out again, but usually you won't feel anything like this. You can just swallow the pollen, eat it, and then you wait for about half an hour, or let's say minimum 10 minutes, and you see how you react. Usually nothing will happen, and you're good to go. If you do feel some tingling on lips or tongue, or even in your throat, you have some weird sensation, then you probably have a slight allergy. Not a really strong one, but you do have some allergy. If you have that type of allergy and you also have seasonal allergies, the good news for you is you can actually use those 2 grains of pollen on a regular basis daily and take just that minute amount. And if you take it regularly, you will desensitize yourself to that slight allergy that you have. It works most of the time. I have many friends that did try this and it worked in many cases. Not all the time though. Sometimes the desensitization process won't work really well. So you'll find out. But it's a very cheap and easy way to get rid of some seasonal allergies, because you don't desensitize yourself only to the pollen you're eating, but also to the seasonal allergies that you experiment very often in springtime, but could be any time in spring or summer. So that's a really interesting thing. Once the test with 2 grains is done, you can start with like half a teaspoon, put it in your mouth, take some water and swallow it, and then you can wait. Some people, about 10 to 15% of the people, will feel a little bit of digestive discomfort in the next hour, let's say. And it usually doesn't last very long, about maybe 15 to 30 minutes. And there might be some discomfort in the digestive area. So that actually happened to me. I was like this myself. I was part of those 10 to 15%. And you know, if you keep eating some of this pollen, it will actually stop after a while. You will feel comfortable now. I can eat pollen and never feel that discomfort anymore. So if you just keep eating some pollen, like half a teaspoon, often, regularly, every day or every second day, or at least once a week, after a while, you will just feel normal. There won't be that discomfort anymore while you eat pollen. So that's the other level of allergy. And that level of kind of allergy, digestive allergy, this one, there's no danger at all. Like you won't get, you know, anaphylactic shock or you know, a swollen tongue or whatever. Nothing of that type. So it is very safe. It's just a matter of going through that discomfort, which is not very interesting. But the good properties of pollen are so high that it's really worth it to go through, you know, to keep going eating some pollen and just go through that period of time where your digestive system is still sensitive to the pollen. So, but if you are free of all those allergies, and that's most of the people, then of course you're good to go. You can start eating your pollen. So now that allergies are covered, let's have a look at what do you do when you receive your pollen actually. You can find your fresh frozen bee pollen in 3 different type of packaging. So the glass jar, could be plastic, but I've never seen it. So a glass jar is a really nice option because you can then reuse the jar. There's also those little packages made of plastic and there's a film on top. That's really good. That's a really good way to get your pollen. And you also have another great option. It's a kind of a plastic stand-up pouch and that you can actually seal. And this is really great because for me, if I buy my pollen, whatever type of container I get at first, I always end up putting it in such a bag that I can seal and actually push the air out. Because once you have your pollen, you will actually keep it in your freezer. So you have your pollen, you can open your jar, open your little container. Once it's open, put it in a plastic bag that you can seal and push the air out, because you want your pollen to be as less as possible, as little as possible in contact with air. So you want to push that air out and then put it in your freezer. This way your pollen will be good for a really long time. If you just open it, put it in your fridge, well, you really have to eat it fast, which is okay. If you really like pollen, that's fine. But if you want to take a break on eating it, well then, you know, it's always better to keep it in the freezer. That's a better option. That being said, yes, it is true. If you take some pollen and you put it in your fridge for about 2 days or even less than that, 1 day, 2 days, it will actually boost all the good probiotic and prebiotic. It will boost them, so it will help even more your intestinal flora when you're going to be eating your pollen. But there's a timing behind this. If you wait for too long, your pollen won't be as good. You'll start losing vitamins and so on. So if you want the full benefits, what I always say, keep it in your freezer. It's little grains, so it won't get stuck all together. So it's perfect this way. Always try to end up putting it in a bag that you can reuse. You know, it's no pollution there. You can reuse that bag and you can seal it all every time and push the air out. So that's a really nice option to keep your pollen. So now that we covered this, we're ready to have a look at how can we eat that pollen. How do we use it? What can we mix it with? So let's have a look at this. So here we have many ways to eat fresh frozen bee pollen. First, let's have a look at that salad, that lettuce. So that's a very simple way. You can just sprinkle some fresh bee pollen on your lettuce, on your salad, and that will add some really nice, interesting taste to your salad. Very interesting type of dressing. You can actually, we'll see that in more details later on, add some bee pollen to your salad dressing itself and then pour it on your lettuce. So that's a really nice way to use it. But when you do this, keep in mind that very often you do a salad bowl, and this will be not only for you, but very often for other people as well. Keep in mind that they might be allergic to pollen. Make sure you do your test, your allergy test with them. Make sure they know that they're not allergic. That's important for the safety of everyone. So right next to it, we have the fruits. So we have grapes and an apple. This is actually to show you that you can do the same with a fruit salad. So we don't have a fruit salad actually, but some fruits. So you get the principle. You just make your fruit salad, then you sprinkle your pollen on top of it. You sprinkle as much as you like. You're totally free to do that. So now we have here three actually different colors of pollen. We have here a pollen from springtime, more bright in color. That also will depend on where you are in the world. Here we have mid-July pollen. That one has quite a bit of clover pollen in it. And that one is September. September here in Quebec has lots of goldenrod pollen in it. So all different pollen will have a different flavor, a different taste. So you might want to choose, oh, that pollen tastes like this, it tastes very fruity. So you can actually mix it with something that will create a good combination, and so on with all different type of pollens. So now what do we have here? Here we have some yogurt. So yogurt is a really easy way. That's the way that most people prefer in terms when they start eating pollen, and you don't know that well the taste of pollen. It might be a big overwhelming for you at first before you get used to it. At that moment, yogurt is the best way to go. You can also add some honey to your yogurt, and that makes it very easy to get used to it. That's the easiest way to do with yogurt. And now we have 4 different liquids here. Let's start with that one here. This is actually a kombucha that I do myself, and this kombucha is actually not very sweet. We wait till the kombucha is really fully processed, so it will be closer to actually an apple cider vinegar than the very sweet kombucha you can find on the market. So this is actually very, very healthy, and this is actually the best way to use your pollen to maximize your benefits for your intestinal flora. The best pollen we have here in combination with kombucha is that one with clover pollen. This is just the best. So I just add some fresh frozen bee pollen to that kombucha. And then of course I will stir the pollen in the kombucha. As you see, kombucha is very powerful to actually melt down that pollen. It's the best liquid, really, for combination with bee pollen. It's awesome. And now you'll find out that some pollen, the flavor of them will mix really well with kombucha, some other not as well. Usually, for me, my personal taste, when the pollen tastes very fruity, like fruits, the combination with kombucha is not optimal because kombucha already have some kind of acidic taste to it, of course. So there you go. You see the result. Very good melting of the pollen. So that's a really nice way to use it. Really one of my favorite right there. Next to the kombucha, we have lemon juice, fresh lemon juice. Now the lemon juice could be actually any type of juice. If you prefer the other type of juice, it's fine. Flavor of lemon juice fits really well with the pollen, and it's actually also very healthy. So it creates a really good combination with the pollen. For the lemon juice, I will prefer this spring pollen here. I add as much as I like. And again, with those combinations here, those liquids, now these are very small quantities. You can do more And you can also add water to them if you find they're too strong, too concentrated. Some people, you know, lemon juice, it's too strong for them. So, and again, lemon juice is really good also to melt the pollen. That's a good combination as well. So yeah, you can actually add as much water as you want, like this, because the kombucha for us also, it's a strong kombucha. So you can actually mix it in a full glass of water if you like. If you do so, don't use hot boiling water, because pollen will lose a lot of vitamins, but also many good probiotic properties in that hot boiling water. So you prefer to put it in the room temperature water. That would be best. Might be a bit more warm than this, but lukewarm would be fine. So let's go now to the next one here. This is actually the salad dressing. So same here, we'll use that pollen. You can just add some pollen to your salad dressing. And then you just pour your salad dressing on your lettuce or whatever type of salad you got. And that will actually increase the flavor of your lettuce big time. For everyone, you know, that feel that, oh, eating salad, it's like eating grass, or I don't know, they think there's not much flavor to lettuce. Well then, adding that type of dressing will increase dramatically the amount of taste in your salad. So now let's move on to this one here. Well, as you can see, this is actually honey, and we can add, let's add this one again, pollen to the honey. This is a really good way to do this. Actually, there you will get some benefits from the synergy effect of all bee products together. You have now pollen and honey. You can even add some powdered or tincture propolis to your mixture. And this is actually called an apicocktail. And if you go on our website, we do have really good apicocktails there. But you can actually build your own. But you need, again, a really good source of honey and pollen. So see the texture. That's really nice, very tasty, really good way to use this. And then that apicocktail, we can also use it with different things. Of course, you could actually pour that apicocktail on your yogurt. I won't do it now, but that would be an option. So we went through most of this here. I think it gives you really good ideas of how you can actually eat your pollen, how you can mix it in terms of amounts. What I've been using right now is just a teaspoon or two, but you can actually use way more. Of course, with those liquids, the more pollen you'll be using, the more it will get close to some kind of a paste if you do use a lot and you have very little liquid. But then that you just adapt with whatever you want. The most important thing when you're eating fresh frozen bee pollen is don't heat it, don't cook it. It needs to be fresh. So these are many nice options for you. So now that we have seen so many ways of using bee pollen, I will show you my favorite way of consuming bee pollen. Because for me, bee pollen is a big part of my nutrition. Very often I will skip a meal, most of the time the breakfast, and I will replace it with about 80 grams of fresh frozen bee pollen. So when you eat that kind of amount of pollen, you need a way that you really do appreciate. And often, since it's a complete source of food, mixing it with other food makes it too much of a meal, and 80 grams of pollen is already plenty. So you don't need to mix it with something else. So what I personally do, I prepare a certain type of herbal tea, which suits the taste of the specific pollen I will be eating. So if you have a big batch of a specific type of pollen, it's really worth it. Just take a couple grains and feel it and try to think, oh, what type of herbal tea or juice, or sometimes I use kombucha depending on the type of pollen. For some it's really nice. So depending on the flavor of your pollen, there will be a specific herbal tea that will match the flavor really well. And it's really worth it if you have a lot of that specific type of pollen to try it out and to try different type of herbal teas and try the taste of it. And once you find what fits for you, keep that tea and then you can use that tea every time. So it's very, very simple. I'll show you right away. So this here is about 80 grams of pollen, of fresh frozen bee pollen. So I'll take like a spoonful, and it's good to drink a bit of water before, which I did already. And then I take the pollen in my mouth. And while the pollen is still in my mouth, I drink some of that tea. And the tea is really interesting because the water just melts the pollen in your mouth. So all the flavor comes out really nicely. And remember, that flavor matches the flavor of the tea. So it's very pleasant in your mouth. It's very intense because you might know already that fresh bee pollen has a strong flavor. So that flavor is really pleasant because you found a good match. And then, it's very easy to eat this way because pollen by itself will be very, let's say, powdery. So it creates some kind of paste in the mouth. The more tea you add, the better the feeling is because you just drink it. So now your tea shouldn't be, your herbal tea shouldn't be could be a tea if it fits the flavor of your pollen, like a green tea or whatever. It just has to suit the type of pollen you get. So your herbal tea shouldn't be too hot. You don't want to burn yourself at all. It has to be very comfortable. It has to be pleasant. And so you just eat it like this, and it will actually, the fact that you mix it with some water, tea, will help you assimilate your pollen in your digestive system. So it's good to drink a lot of water when we actually eat pollen, and eating it along with tea or any type of juice or really liquid will help the assimilation of the pollen. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and see you another time for another Apitherapy video.